Hello and welcome to Flippin' Through, the internet's #1 Mad Magazine news, review, and interview channel. And today we are flipping live with a special guest. But before we do that, we have housekeeping. We have things that we need to take care of. First and foremost, if you're watching live, please make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and leave a comment in the chat. All right, make sure that that happens. It really does help the show. The more you like it as you're watching it, then it might get shared to other people and they could join in and you can make a new friend in the chat. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that just be the bee's knees? If you're watching not live, you can still hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. You can still share it with all sorts of lovely people in your life. If you want to support me in another way. Why would you want to do that? I do not know, but patreon.com/flippinthrough. Link is down in the description. You can also become a channel member, like Me Too Big has. Me Too Big is our channel member. He can get videos early. He can leave little emojis in the chat. Look at emojis like this. Boom. How about that? That's pretty cool. Anyway, here are the people who support me and whom I get to thank today. Hutch, Ben Forsgren, Joey Jesso, Reflection of Perfection, Tom Richmond, David Strickler, Megan McInerney, Bobby Weigel, Cam Hayden, Rob Wilson, Rod Meadsberry, Andrew Goldfarb, Casey Ori, and Little Cozy Nostril. Thank you guys so much for the support. I hope I can keep on earning it. And I forgot to tell you, if you support me on Patreon, what do you get? You can get a 6 set of stickers. You can get these awesome signature buttons from the plank owners of Mad Magazine. And you can, of course, if you give me enough money, get this awesome stencil, which turns out looking great. Anyway, so let's say hi to people because also I am still waiting. Bill Wray, I've been in communication with him, and he's going to be joining us today. That is, he's not in the back area right now. So I did tell him I got about 10 minutes of housekeeping. I don't want to waste his time. He's a busy man, okay? So let's say hello to everybody who is here this evening. Oh, answering my question, presumably, shall we play a game? No, last time is thermonuclear war. Don't need that stress. Hello, Harvey Esquire. How do you do? Shane's Hobbies is here. Good evening to you. Sketchy Work says, this can't be real, right? Well, it's not real yet. So, but yeah, it's supposed to happen, unless I've been catfished by Kyle again. Who else is here? I'm skipping over some of this stuff. Oh, Sticks McFly is here, and David Hutchison. That's Hutch. Thanks for your support. I'm assuming that's Hutch from New Zealand. How's that? Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson is a racing car driver from New Zealand. So that's pretty fun. That's pretty fun for you, I assume. Anyway, hold on. I need to look. Okay. So this is something I got in the mail, and check it out. I'm not going to flip it over because it has his address. I forgot to black it out. Pat, that bottom left quadrant on your green, yellow, gritty thing has been needing a sticker for quite some time now. Might I suggest that the purple Alfred goes there? You're welcome. Madly, Clown Nookie. And he's talking about this. This is the quadrant that he's talking about. Let me, God, you don't need to put Scotch tape on it, Clown Nookie. I want to be mindful that I don't dox someone. Okay, I got everything. Oh, look at that. Some lovely Spy versus Spy, little die cut stickers, and a purple Alfred E. Neuman. I love these, dude. I'm gonna keep one of these. I think you're right. The quadrant, that bottom left quadrant is it's being ignored. It's being neglected. That's the word. Okay, there's something else I wanted to say, respond to. That's Shane's Hobbies says, have you all watched When We Went Mad? Have you all watched When We Went Mad? When We Went Mad, of course. God damn, dude. Who made these stickers? Do I have to get? There we go. Boom. It's my letter opener. Oh, this is like, that's thick. That's a good sticker. Maybe I'll put this one. I'll make sure it's all square, perfectly square. Shit. Anyway, When We Went Mad was a documentary that got crowdfunded. I think it was like either on Kickstarter or GoFundMe, like 10 years ago or something. It was one of those projects that was delayed and had delays upon delays upon delays, and it's finally out. I think you can see it on what do you call it? Shit, what the Apple TV? Anyway, no, I have not seen it, to answer your question. Anyway, Clown Nookie, thank you so much for that sticker. And Mr. Ray is here. So without further ado, please say hello, give a warm welcome to Mr. Bill Wray. And I should apologize. Oh, sorry. Hello.
Yeah. What are you apologizing for?
I guess I put you in the thumbnail and I just introduced you as Bill Wray, but you go by William now.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound pretentious, but that's my painting name. I wanted to separate my cartooning career from my painting career.
Yeah.
And I was actually so successful at it that one of my editors over at former editors over at Dark Horse a long time ago, Bob Schreck, was asked that directly. Someone told him Bill Wray and William Wray is the same guy, and he said, "No way." So all my career I've jumped around in different styles. That's what an illustrator does. He can kind of, not every illustrator, a Brad Holland does Brad Holland, no matter what it is. But I was an adaptable guy. And so
yeah. Well, and I can't wait to talk about that because you have a pretty wild career. Before we begin, why don't you, for anybody living under a rock, introduce yourself, please.
I'm an old guy, old cartoonist now, who started off when I was 16, working for Disney as a comic book inker, because while I was still in high school, I could ink pretty well. A lot of young people can. They have that master, that control, great eyesight, but my drawing was still not there. So I started off inking. I learned to animate. I'll do real broad strokes, and if you want to do more detailed things, then. And so I would kind of jump back and forth between the animation business and comic books, and occasional illustration, storyboarding, things like that. Comic books, I did coloring, I did inking, I did penciling. Seriously, but more in my comfort zone was doing cartoony stuff. And I worked at Cracked for a long time, and then I went to Mad for 10 years. All during those times, I worked on animated projects too, from Ren and Stimpy to Samurai Jack to more recently, well, it's already been a couple of years, but the new Harley Quinn show. And
on HBO?
Yeah. I was the art director on that for the first season. And more recently, I've just decided to retire because the animation business is just, in a horrible state right now. And I did briefly work a little bit on the new Fantastic Four film, but nothing worth mentioning.
All right.
We could talk about it a little bit. I jumped through I jumped over a million things. We can break things down into details if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, what you talked about, just like right before, like it's great. I'm sorry, like I know you because of Mad Magazine.
Sure.
Yeah, and Monroe, and that's the whole focus of this channel is Mad Magazine, and Monroe,
Yeah.
like growing up, was one of my absolute favorite um, parts of Mad Magazine. And what's been crazy is as I like grow older and start like trying to find out more information about these artists that I enjoy, um, like your career in particular is so expansive, and it seems like you have done like not a little bit of everything, like a
Hello.
very good, a respectable amount of
Got a
everything.
little hiccup there.
Oh, uh-oh. Did I lose you a little bit?
Hello.
Hello. We still see you
Okay.
and we still hear you.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't hear you, but
Oh,
now you're
okay.
back.
All right, perfect. I was just saying it's like looking at your career, it's not like you've done a little bit of everything. You've done like a lot of everything.
Hmm.
Um,
That's a good way to
so
put it.
yeah, and I like also kind of talking about is it you asked is it pretentious to like try to separate the illustration from your like the fine art paintings you're doing?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't think so. If that
No.
was a serious question, I think it's great. um, so I guess like one thing, I'm a latecomer to Cracked magazine. I had it when I was a kid, but I
Hmm.
was a little bit of a hater. I was just sort of like tried and true Mad Magazine guy. But
Well, I don't
you
want to ask
were
you what you thought about Sick magazine.
Sick. I only discovered Sick like a few years ago. Like
Yeah.
all of those other ones, like Sick and Crazy, and uh,
There's every time you think you've heard of every single copy, another one pops up. It's like there must have been dozens.
well, yeah. A good example is I was where I just have this handy. Um, a guy from Cracked made this Thwack magazine.
Uh-huh.
Here. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
Forget- okay.
Who's the guy?
I oh here it is. I there were some of his business cards were stuck in there. It's Martin Jalad.
Nope, don't know him.
Yeah, he made it like a hell of a comic magazine or like a satire magazine. It's really
Hmm.
quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so how did you? I mean, because your career is so expansive, and we do have like a limited amount of time. I do want to talk mostly about like Cracked and Mad, if that's okay
Sure.
with you.
Absolutely.
Um, how did you get started over at Cracked?
Mort Todd, as I'm sure you know of. Let's see,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. He, I don't know if he called me or I heard there was a new editor over there and I submitted. I should know that, but I don't remember. But I went to see him and he hired me right away. And I immediately started doing covers for him and parodies and the back covers.
yeah,
Um, and they paid me a pretty good rate. And I really liked the guy. Um, so it was kind of a thing made in heaven. The back covers were a weird thing, though. It was like making Sylvester as
yeah. I
all
have
these
some
different
right here.
celebrities. Oh, I never got that one back. Mort must have stole it. I did so many I've forgotten about them, and I've never gone back and reviewed. Oh, I didn't get that one back either.
Well, unfortunately, all of the I think all of the archives for Cracked were lost in the whole anthrax scare.
Anthrax scare?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe you would know about this. This is an anecdote I heard is that the reason why Cracked they only have like scans of the issues for anything they reprint is because their archives were in the same building where Anthrax was sent to back in the 90s.
What?
If you remember. So,
You know more about crack than I do. Yeah.
but I mean, I don't know. This is just something I heard once,
Oh,
and I just
This is a Mort Todd scheme, and suddenly
yeah.
he stole all the artwork out of the warehouse. You know, I
Well,
don't
yeah.
know.
Apparently, they had to destroy it because of that. But
Really?
yeah, I mean
Wow.
that should probably get fact checked at some point.
Probably.
In the meantime, I'm just going to keep
Magic
repeating
disappearing
that
artwork.
story.
Oh, what are the odds?
Yeah. But I mean, these are great. I love these. And so do you know, like, who did this? Was
Me.
this, were you were responsible for that as well?
Yeah, clearly a knockoff of Mad Magazine's Borders, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Which I
Mort was committed to fucking with Mad, you know, and they felt it. They were intimidated by it. In fact, I'll tell you a story of what even happened. They contacted me, Mad, and they don't contact people very often. You contact them, and then they make you go see them 3 times, and then maybe you'll get in. And I'm all excited. I go down there, and they're like, "Well, we think you're doing some really good work at Cracked." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And they're like, you know, and I got to give it. I think they saw that one of the stories I did where John Severinked me. It was a parody of Elvis, and he made me look really good. So I think that that had something to do with it. But they said to me, "Well, you know, I was there with Ficarra and Nick Meglin, and we'd like you to quit Cracked." And I said, "Sure." You know, because I wanted to be Mad. I mean, my whole life, that's what I was. Nothing I wanted more.
Yeah.
Biggest hero in comics was Wally Wood. I Kurtzman, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure. Well, when would I start here, and what would I do? And they go, "Oh, we're not offering you a job." I'm like, "What?" And I said, No, we just want you to quit Cracked." And I didn't know this was kind of like wink. They were there was this level of arrogance. It just was, you know, that's just how Feldstein was. I knew him a little bit, and Ficarra and Nick was a little bit that way, but Nick and I got along. Well, we can go into that later. But yeah, I just said, well, I can't quit without a guarantee that I'm working here. You don't have to guarantee a monthly thing or anything, but just say I'm working here, and I'll do it. I'm working at Crack to get your attention, for fuck's sake, you know. And they're like, "No, we can't guarantee it." So I said, "Okay, well then." It was sure nice meeting with you guys. I hope you change your mind. And so I just kept working for Cracked.
Yeah.
And then this is an inside story. I'm sure that a nice juicy one. One day, the publisher of Cracked calls me.
Yeah.
And
who was that at the time? Was that
name? You'd have to look at an issue. If you looked at one of those issues of Cracked, his name might be on it. But he called me and said, "Let's go to lunch." And so he went to some super big cattleman style restaurant that was very expensive. And he sits me down and he butters me up. And he proceeds to say, "How would you like to be the editor of Cracked?" And I'm like, "What?" And I go, "What's going on with Mort?" And he goes, "He's being difficult in his negotiations." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Now, I was so young. I should have said right then and there, "Well, when you guys figure that out, I'll talk to you." But visions of, you know, here's where my, you know, it was not a loyal thing to do. And I should have been loyal to Mort, but I really wasn't, because how many times in your life you're going to be offered to edit a magazine like Cracked? It's not Mad, but it's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, I said, "Well, I'm uncomfortable with this scenario because," and then he went through this whole reassuring thing. "Look, if you take the job, we can still give Mort, you know, because Mort wrote a lot of the stuff that I did. We can still have him write, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'll make sure there's no hard feelings, but I just want to know that if things don't work out, that you would accept the job. And I said, okay, I will. So not much of I'm not proud of that moment, but it's like I put my career first before our friendship. And of course he never forgave me for that. So, and I still was doing a little work for a little while, but basically what happened is he was being passive aggressive. I don't remember the exact details, but I said, well, can I try writing my own material? And he said, sure. And he let me do an Arsenio Hall parody, but then never told me whether it was good or bad. It just, yeah. And so he stopped talking to me. I found out that, they were doing What The over at Marvel. Are you familiar with that? It's like a not brand F.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so superhero
no, I'm
parody
not
comic.
familiar with that.
It's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Done in those years. And I was getting to write and draw stories for that. But I was trying to like make up with Mort, and I said, would you like to come with me over to Marvel and you can write what I'm doing? And he didn't respond to that. So I was dead to him, and probably still am. And went over there, and it was kind of a good period for me for a little while. Because I could write and draw whatever I wanted, and there was no specific editor on it. They were trying to find somebody to do it. And then when they finally settled on the editor, she wanted to censor everything I did. The other editors didn't care. So that didn't work out. And then I just went, what happened? I went back to, I got the offer to work on Ren and Stimpy. And we don't have to go into that right now, but, and just to get a time frame. And then Ren and Stimpy ran its course. And then I was the art director for Space Jam, of all things.
Yeah, I saw
They
that.
had about 3 art directors, at least. And I could tell you stories about that, but this is about Mad. And Joe Orlando calls me while I'm working there and says, listen, I kind of want you over here. Would you do some samples? So he sends me some samples, and it's a parody on Bill Clinton, and I do a couple pages, and he doesn't like them. And I put a lot of work into them. I thought they were pretty good. So then a few months goes by. I'm still at Space Jam, and I get a call from, who was the art director then? Kaboom Schneider.
Oh, okay.
He says, look, we got this strip we want to do with a TV writer. Of course, we're talking about Anthony Barbieri. Yeah. And Joe Orlando's still here, though, and he turned you down, and we couldn't figure out why. But he's going to be gone soon. So would you do some samples of this character? And so I said, okay, I'll do that. I'm kind of busy working on this Ivan Reitman movie, but sure, I'll do it. And I did the samples. They liked them. And then at that same time, this is a trick that Ivan did several times. He and I got along, but he was a notoriously tough guy. Give you an example. You familiar with the European artist Mobius? Jean Girard? Yeah.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
One day I'm there working. Well, the first week I was in there, he wouldn't approve the design of the ship for the movie for 6 months. And literally everybody was eating shit for that because it was just so embarrassing. They kept assigning an artist to it. No, I don't like it. No, I don't. I come in and do it and get it right. I just said, you know what? I'm not going to lose on this first meeting with him on an important design thing. I did about 20 drawings of spaceships of all different kind of things, from ridiculous half spaceship, half car things, which it ended up being,
Yeah.
to very more serious, but still slightly goofy. Because Ivan used to say, you people, you don't get it. You don't get the funny. You give me these drawings. Yeah, they're good drawings, but they're not funny. They got to be good drawings and funny. And the thing is I got that. I could get that. I understood that, the idea. But he was so adverse to approving things to just have to, he looked at all my drawings. He's looking at because, and he goes, yeah, I like him. Yeah, he's not very Mr. Praise, but he was you could tell he liked them. And he goes, okay, take the front end of this one and take the back end of this one, put them together. I went, okay. I just went and did it and came back in an hour and gave, what? An hour? He's done? Yeah. So then I was the hero there for a while.
Yeah.
But we don't want to get too deep into Space Jam. But to make a long story short, there was a change of guard right at the end as they were getting stuff done, because Ivan's thing was he could get more time and more money when he would explain to the money people, I had to fire the art director. I had to fire the producer. I had to, somebody would get thrown on the ashes, to buy a little more time. And the quality. But my story, why I asked you about Mobius, he did 5 gigantic paintings, ink paintings that he would do of the main scenes in the movie. But they were serious looking, they were kind of scary. And he did that same thing. He looked at him like this, if you can see my hand. He's looking at the thing. Oh, we're talking about big, major things that you need to stare at for 3 minutes,
Yeah.
And he did the where's the funny thing.
Yeah.
And he turns to the assistant and says, does he do changes? No. Okay. So Mobius's shot lasted 3 minutes, maybe 2.
That's nuts.
And back then they were $5,000 a piece to do these. And that back then that was a lot of money, it's still not bad,
Yeah.
So I think that was what it was. So that was the situation with that. But right as that ended, they got serious about Monroe.
Yeah.
Lucky for me. And let's see. We have a meeting about it. They tell me all about it. Yeah, sure.
Before we get into that, I do want to know.
I just keep going.
Yeah. I do want to know a little bit more about like your experience at Cracked. And
oh, sure.
I'm sorry to hear about the Mort Todd stuff. I had Mort Todd on here like years ago, and we were chatting, and this era, the era that you were a part of and Cracked, is really fascinating to me. There was like there's Mort Todd, who is just like this kind of like skateboard punk guy. And then who else? Daniel Klaus was doing The Ugly Family at the time. Like, what were you in New York? Like, were you able to like? Yeah. So like, what was that like? I mean, Mort Todd said he was like, Cracked magazine is nobody's favorite magazine. Like, we're the magazine you get after Mad, and I think he embraced that in a way, where you can start having fun with it and like stealing the borders like that.
Yeah.
But what was that like, your time at Cracked? Because it was just a few years, right?
Yeah. Well, it was a great time because I was doing what I wanted to do. His scripts were pretty good. I got a friend of mine who's a writer named Robert Lauren Fleming, and we did a Predator parody. I don't know if you ever saw that, but that's the funniest thing I ever worked on there. He was a funnier writer than Mort. But he had difficulty making deadlines. He had just his issues. But I think I probably did the best art job I ever did was on that story. But I generally enjoyed Mort's stuff. There was no big twists or surprises with it, whereas Robert had a way of kind of going in a deeper, funnier place that was more original, of a thinker. But I couldn't be happier because I'm so brutally honest. It still sounds like I'm being mean to him by being honest, but that's just how I am. But he was letting me do the occasional cover and the back cover every month, as you know. And I was fairly well paid, and I almost always did a story for the inside. and then occasional one-pagers and things like that. It kept me as kind of busy as I wanted to be. And being in the same magazine with Severin was amazing to me. And I even got to know him a little bit via the phone. I would give him a call once in a while. And I thanked him for doing such a nice job on, inking the one job he inked. And that was a crowning thing. What else?
Well,
I told you about the sad demise, and
yeah,
it was only about 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, it wasn't long.
yeah, I think 86 to 88. Well,
Yeah.
Ruben says, keep rambling, Mr. Ray. This is actually very engaging, and your frankness is awesome. This is book type stuff, like my days in commercial art or something.
Well, thank you, Ruben.
When you said the crowning achievement of having Severin ink your stuff, like as a fan, I'm curious what your experience was like that, because you said like very casually, well, I got a call from Joe Orlando, and John Severin was inked my work and made it look really good, and that got their attention. What was that like as a young artist?
I was really blessed. I mean, I don't know why I didn't. I mean, I did meet Wally Wood, but that's a story we can go to if you want to. But from the get-go, people were really kind to me in the business of starting as an artist, and I had people do amazing favors for me. And there was a guy who was a comic art collector I met at comic conventions, and he's just like, "Hey, how'd you like to meet Al Williamson?" Another EC guy. Never did comedy, but I went to work for Al Williamson for an entire summer, and he was the sweetest guy you'd want to know. And he also told me stories about Wally Wood and things like that. That crazy Wally Wood, and I don't really know the answer to this, but when I was working for him, Archie Goodwin called me and said, "You want to ink an issue of Howard the Duck?" And I'm like, yes, thinking I would ink. I don't know if you're familiar with all the artists, but Gene Colan was the artist at that point. And he's somebody I always wanted to ink. But it was a fill-in issue by another guy named Val Merrick, and he's very good, but wasn't the same thing. But I get all the artwork, and I'm inking it, and I'm supposed to be working for him, drawing backgrounds in his comic strip. And he's like, "Hey, why don't you let me ink something on that?" That's what he always did. He collaborated with people his whole career. And I'm like, "You want to ink my backgrounds?" Al Williamson is inking my backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, because Archie Goodwin was his best friend and main writer on the strip, I'm sure that he engineered this idea. Al did, to get me something. But they never told me. And I was afraid to even tell anybody that Al was working on it, because, well, it's my first Marvel job. Blah, 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 So, yeah, we worked on it together. He inked all my backgrounds. Told me I should go see Wally Wood, but I didn't do it. I don't know why. Why was I particularly bringing that up in relationship to Cracked? I don't know. I guess just another EC guy.
Yeah. Well, I had asked about like, what's that like? You had mentioned Severin and Orlando, like
right,
getting to meet and work with these men.
Yeah. Well, Severin and I didn't work closely or anything. It would just be like, I penciled it and they sent it to him and he inked it. I just asked Mort, you think I could get Severin to ink one of my stories or something like that?
Yeah.
I think it was my idea. And the Cracked offices were very interesting, because Mort liked the old school guys. He hired Steve Ditko. And I got to meet him in the office of Cracked.
Oh, wow.
And he was dressed. Are you familiar with his comic strip called The Question?
Yeah. The little putty face. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just he would just wear an old school Spirit kind of coat, long New York coat and a fedora and the whole thing. He dressed like that. He walked in and he would, except for that, he didn't have a mask on.
Yeah.
And Mort just very casual says, "Hey, Bill, want to meet one of your fellow contributors to Cracked?" "Yeah." "Oh, this is Steve Ditko." And, what? And unfortunately, Steve isn't a guy who likes strong emotion. you know, and it's like he has a little trouble dealing with praise and all of that, and people, period, you know, very isolated guy. And I just go over there, I just start drooling all over him, you know, like, oh my God, you're Spider-Man, you know, blah blah blah. And it was just like, and as I'm talking to him, I'm looking at of all things, the collar on his shirt, and I realized the clothes, it's really frayed, you know. It's like, oh my, and the coat was the same. He's been wearing this stuff for 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been to a store to buy a new shirt in 20 years, you know. And as I'm talking to him, I realize he's moving he's moving over like this, right? And I'm moving with him, right? I'm moving with him and talking to him. And he's just like moving toward the elevator, you know, not saying anything. And then he punches the elevator nervously and then just goes inside and the door closes. And I'm like, what the hell just happened there? And Steve's just like, that's Ditko. What are you doing showing all that emotion? And I'm like, So if I just played it cool and let him talk if he wanted to talk, maybe that would have lasted for a few minutes. I don't know. But as a side note, I did the same thing to Crumb and he reacted the same way. I can be very intense, you know. So
I noticed your Zap shirt.
Yeah. Crumb would be, if I had to do my top 5.
Crumb, I love this. Yeah.
Crumb, Wally Wood, Frazetta. Who else? Of course, there's more than that. Bernie Wrightson.
Okay.
And Kirby.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is actually a good. Maybe I should talk about this for a moment. In the description, I put a link to your Instagram page. And your Instagram is an amazing one to follow. Not only is there like your fine artwork, but you post like old cartooning stuff that you find. Like there's this great one with Wonder Woman and Hawk Girl. Which I thought was like, oh, it was so awesome. I absolutely loved that. And then you also do like you post a bunch of like Chester Gould, and I saw a Tintin one the other day. It's a fun. You're a fun follow.
I love Chester Gould, and I just every time I post him, I say this catchphrase: Chester Gould was insane. You know, I'm absolutely convinced he was. You know, I think he was like super repressed. So he acted everything out, you know, like it wouldn't surprise me if he was closet queen.
Oh,
and well, it's like he loved doing stories about lesbians. There wasn't a woman in his stories that wasn't really a lesbian in one way or another.
Maybe it's like the guy who is the guy who did Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah, it's right on the page.
Marsden, right?
How's it pronounced?
Marsden, wasn't it? Something Marsden?
Something like that. I know his name. I'm at this age now where 2 minutes from now it might come back to me, but when I'm put on the spot, I'm like, I can't think of it.
Well, that's my life. I'm just constantly trying to conjure things that I thought I heard one time.
But he's a really cool artist because he was crude, but he was.
Are you talking about Gould or Marsden?
Wonder Woman. Well, both of them really. Well, no. I'm convinced that Chester Gould could have been a huge pop artist. He'd have just shit over Roy Lichtenstein. You know, he just would have. Some of his panels are just absolutely amazing. And it's like, even when he's wrong, even when his perspective is wrong, he forces it to be right. It's the most. He can do things with how people are shot and killed in ways that, like, you realize you can't see that at that angle. That doesn't make, but would make a storytelling sense because he wanted to have oftentimes two things happening at the same time, and he would pull it off.
Yeah, he
was unbelievable.
He's an artist that I discovered recently, and I went to Half Price Books and I bought a bunch of like the compendiums of or collections of the Dick Tracy stuff, and it's so much fun to read.
Yeah, it's a really good read, and the obvious unrestricted nature of it. You have to think that editorial must have occasionally said, "Oh, come on, you can't be beheading children or whatever it might fucking be," and he would just say, "Fuck you, I'll quit the strip." And you go, "Okay, let him behead the children,"
Yeah.
I mean, and it was the time frame too. It was just because all comics were all, vile, as it could be, and I've always come up against those problems in all my different projects that I've done. I've tried to push the bounds of taste and gotten in trouble.
Yeah. Hey, before we move on to the mad era of your time, I was wondering, would you like to play a game that I put together for this live stream?
I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm game. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. This is let me get everything looped up. I left it up to the chat. I put a vote, and they've all voted yes to playing the game. I wish I would have. Well, I'll explain something later. But here's the intro. Welcome once again to YouTube's favorite game show, Schmuck, Marry, Kill. Flippin through and its affiliates do not recommend or condone the schmucking, marrying, or killing of anyone.
Well, I missed the first part of it because the sound was down, and I clicked it on after I realized it was going. But
I don't have
any idea, but we can go ahead.
It's a game called Schmuck, Marry, Kill. It's a take on the schoolyard game Fuck, Marry, Kill, where you're given 3 people and you have to decide which one is the schmuck, which one you would marry, and which one you would kill.
Somehow I've never heard about this, but okay.
All right. Okay, so if this makes you uncomfortable at all, we can abandon the game.
No, I have no shame whatsoever.
All right, that's delightful. So for the first round, we're going to be looking at, this is all Mad themed. So the first one is Mad editors of Mad. We have Harvey Kurtzman, Al Feldstein, and Bill Morrison. Schmuck, Marry, Kill.
Do we do each one?
You have to decide. Each one of those would be assigned either schmucking, marrying, or killing.
I would. Well, that's a tough one. I'll marry Kurtzman.
Okay.
I guess I got to kill Feldstein. And obviously, what's left over is the last one.
Schmucking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Morrison.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you want to explain your answer at all, or
sure? Kurtzman, because he's Kurtzman. I mean, you can't even. I can't even tell you how much I traded away in art to get one page of his those early. It wasn't a Hey Look, but it was just after that, a beautiful one pager in his early cartoony style, which is the epitome for me. And of course his writing and laying out on Mad. I got to know Al a little bit, but we parted on a not great thing because I put him on the spot. He wanted to talk to me because I was in fine art galleries, and that's what he wanted, right?
Yeah.
And I said to him, I don't know if you find this uncomfortable, Al, but why'd you fire Severin? I didn't say fire. Why didn't Severin keep working for you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, he wouldn't really. He was kind of mealy-mouthed about it. What my guess about that is that even though he was a gruff guy, Feldstein was kind of liberal, and Severin was a conservative. So I'm wondering, well, maybe that's what it was. But I said to him, Severin kept crack going all those years, and it has to be a thorn in Gaines's side. He would draw half the issue, always the covers. I mean, Cracked would die without Severin. Why wouldn't you keep him working there just to kill Cracked?
Yeah.
And it was almost like the idea hadn't occurred to him or something. You know, it was just like, it made him so mad he didn't want to talk to me anymore. So that was that. And Morrison was a nice guy, and he was supposed to be negotiating a comeback for Monroe on his brief tenure in the
Yeah.
Neuman. But that didn't work out. So
Yeah.
I have no hard feelings toward him. Anything, you know how this is. You just kind of have to throw somebody on the fire for this thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know what you mentioned about like not thinking about bringing back Severin. I mean, certainly he would come back, right? Like Harvey Kurtzman and Will Elder came back to Mad. You know, why wouldn't Severin, if given the chance?
Well, maybe they had such a blowout fight at some point that Severin wouldn't. But I would think that the only issue would be that there's no way they're going to give Severin that much work. They could raise his page rate, but it might be a matter of him getting 4 pages at Mad a month versus getting 25 pages over at Cracked. Yeah. They couldn't compete with that. And the cover. And the back cover.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. It might have been something pragmatic like that, but he didn't tell me.
All right. Our next one is art directors. Sam Viviano, Lenny Brenner, and Susie Hutchison.
I would kill Sam Viviano, and the other two, I don't know.
All right. So, all right. Great.
Yeah. Oh, there's a man I'll talk shit about if you want to hear some shit.
Yeah, well, I would love to. Yeah.
Let me tell you how it worked, how Monroe worked, and why, and everything. I didn't set that up yet. When they said you're going to be doing the strip, I have my first meeting on the phone with John and Nick.
All right, John Ficarra and Nick Meglin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, listen, we've got this writer. He's funny, but he doesn't understand comics. That's why you're here. And I was surprised they were this candid. They said to me, we don't know how to do moment-to-moment comedy. We don't do that. We do movie parodies that, they do what Mad does, but we don't do, this is going to be like a live comic, so to speak, 3-page of old comic book style comedy, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. We'll leave it up to you guys. Leave it up to us? Really? Okay. And so what we want to do is we're just going to give you these raw scripts, which are not, they're not going to be broken down the way you would expect a script to be. And you break it down. And I'm like, oh, great. I can do that. And basically, after we talk about it for a while, I'm realizing, and I said, so what kind of editorial direction are you guys going to do on it? Well, you're kind of doing that. I'm like, I am? And they're like, yeah. And then I said, well, okay, well, if I have control over this thing, do I get a co-writing credit? No, because I knew that I'd have to do some changing of things. And I also don't have the ability not to try to make a joke funnier. I mean, that's just what I'm like. So unless I'm just told, do it verbatim, don't change anything. And so I said, no, we would like you to tighten up the writing if it's needed. And then when you've got it where we want it, we'll go over it with you and we'll say yes or no on certain things, and we'll have an editorial meeting. And I said, well, as long as we're here trying to figure out how to do the strip and make it stand out, can I do hand lettering? No. No. And I'm like, well, you want it to look like a comic strip, more like a contemporary comic thing. And your font lettering that you've done forever is old-fashioned.
Little square boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, could I at least use a current letterer? They'll do it typeset. I mean, on computer, uh, but I'll be able to. I want to play with the lettering font. I don't know if you ever noticed that,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, I think we can get jokes out of that. I think we can get character stuff with the font changing. I'll try not to be too crazy with it because it'd be irritating, but I stole the idea from the Kiss comic book. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they
The
played
one
around
with
with
the blood
font.
in it.
Huh?
The one where they used their blood and mixed the ink with it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't
All
remember.
right.
I think I vaguely remember that. But they would change the font depending what character was talking. So I just stole that idea and didn't go as crazy with it as them. Had Richard Starkings do the lettering, his people. And we would have meetings, and the writer wasn't involved. Tony wasn't involved. We were very good friends, but sometimes he would complain about what had been changed, and I would just keep quiet because it was my change. And or sometimes it would be theirs because they liked Mad likes formula. They always have, and they kind of wanted each ending to be Monroe riding off into the sunset in a way, And I would take things in a different direction a lot of times, and we would fight a little bit. And what I didn't know was that Ficarra had it up to here with me almost from the beginning. And Meglin was my champion.
Okay.
And he loved me, and he would calm me down, and I loved him. And he was just a great guy. And he had a sense of, this guy is making this trip funnier, and this guy's the right artist for it. And he's worth protecting for that. So he did that. And they told me, and I'm sure they didn't want to, but I mean, maybe Nick did, but it was the most popular strip in the magazine for when we did it. It got the most letters and everything else, which I'm very proud of. But and the whole idea is to take it, as you know, it was a pretty raunchy strip. And if somebody tells me we want it raunchy, they're going to get it. So, I don't think there's a whole lot of dildo vibrator jokes and mom figures who look like basically a whore and acted like one. I mean, Tony was pushing it and I was pushing it.
Well, a few things. One, you knew there's so much drama behind the scenes. Of course there was, right? I'm very grateful for you sharing this story because I get the sense from every interview I've watched or read from the Mad guys, there seems to be a very clear sort of like, I don't know, looking back with rose-tinted glasses, right? And it's like, this is the story, this is how it worked. And they don't deviate, and there is not much, I think, honesty or forthrightness when it comes to like, it's a fucking business with creative people. There's going to be butting heads. There's going to be big emotions. And
well, to give you how difficult I was, even with Nick, he said, you need to join the National Cartoonist Society. We'll have lunch with Mort Drucker. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Okay. And we have lunch. And then at a certain point, it's a great lunch and everything. And at a certain point, Nick excuses himself. And he's one, so I'm 1-to-1 with Mort Drucker, and I'm thinking this is great. And I don't even realize what's coming. And Mort was to give me a sobering talk of like, you need to like toe the line a little bit more. And I'm hearing this from Mort Drucker, and so it's just like, Mort Drucker toes the line. You think that he, of all people, would have some power at Correct or something. I mean, at Mad, and it was just like, cool down, buddy. And Sergio Aragones told me the same thing, because I was chafing under certain editorial things, and that's my weakness as a freelancer, as an artist working for the company, is that I don't know how to control my emotions. I will fight for a joke, things like that.
Yeah.
And that is not what they want you to do. So it's a tribute to them that they put up with me for that long when they didn't do that with most artists there.
Yeah.
And I'll give them that, and particularly Nick. But I got my comeuppance ultimately,
Yeah.
which was they got rid of Kaboom Snyder, who he and I got along just great. He was so happy that it worked out, and he had everything to do with me being on that strip. They got rid of him, and Sam Viviano, of all people, suddenly was the art director. And I'm like, why him? You know, it's like, Sam, what can I say? Sam's work was good, but it was kind of, I don't know, he looked like a conglomeration of what a contemporary mad artist should be. It was a little bit of Jack Davis. It was a little bit of Mort. And if you remember, he would draw everything just pretty much the way I'm looking at you here now. I mean, he loved straight on shots.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was not an innovator in any kind of way. And he comes aboard and he starts art directing me hard. He actually said this to me. I couldn't believe it. It was like, you remember the logo where Monroe is kind of part of the logo? You see
Yeah.
his nose hanging down and the whole thing? He didn't understand what that meant. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't understand it? And I said, you're older than me, or my age, or whatever it was. And I said, you never heard of Kilroy was here? This is a thing from World War II. You're a young man, but you know, it's like,
Yeah. The little hands
yeah,
and the yeah.
And it would just be like, yeah, this is a whole Kilroy joke. The logo is whole based on Kilroy. I know it's a little old fashioned, but it kind of works. And he goes, and then he proceeds to go, why do you always cut off the view of him? You have him looking over the couch all the time and things like that. And I said, you don't notice that his mother's embarrassing him? He doesn't even want to be in the room. He doesn't even want to talk to her. So it's almost like he's like doing this to just like, and then, but at that same time, I'm repeating that joke. It's the logo, you know, it's the logo joke. I didn't say this at that time, if we did an animated show, it would have been worked into the titles, you know, somehow. And so he's like, well, I would prefer that you would just always draw him full figured and straight on. And
it's not Alfred E. Neuman.
And he would say, well, what's with all the font lettering change? He objected to everything about the strip.
Yeah.
So I kind of tried to give him what he wanted, but what the price of it was my heart was gone from the strip. This is about the last year of the strip or so.
Yeah.
And I just started doing it formula and putting less work into it. And then he starts complaining, you're not putting the love into it you used to. And I don't think I said this, but I said, well, you killed my love. What do you expect?
Yeah.
But I just kept drawing it. I talked to Tony and I said, look, I'm kind of pushing things on this with the editor here, with the art director. And as you notice, there's a more simplified version of the drawing than it was before. You know, the love is gone. I hate to say it. And he says, I understand. And I still think it looks fine. You know, just keep doing what you're doing. So, but at a certain point, he gave me an ultimatum. He said, either you detail this stuff more and do exactly what I say, or you're off the strip. And so I just said, all right, I'm off the strip. And that was that. It was a little more complicated than that, but
yeah.
And one thing I left out was that Nick had left about the time Sam came on. So I had no more protector.
Okay.
And Fakar didn't want to have editorial meetings with me anymore because he did it for Nick.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it. I think he respected Nick's kind of seniority, shall we say, even though they were equals, technically, I believe. So without my protector there and Sam hammering me all the time, he even had the nerve to, when I was particularly bothered by something, he would say, listen, I'm telling Mort Drucker to make changes. Who do you think you are? And I was like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got to tell you one more thing. I go on and on. I'm sorry, but he asked me, why do you do these shots where there's no dialogue in the panel? And I'm like going, he's asking me what a reaction shot is. He doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I said, it's called a reaction shot. It's a pause in the story where you see how stunned somebody is. And he said, well, you don't need to do that. And I said, yeah, I guess Charles Schultz got it all wrong. I am my own worst enemy, honestly. I really am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you're kind of a pain in the ass, but you create incredible art and an incredible product. So it's sort of,
it was
good. Yes. Well,
so it's worth a little struggle, it's worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what you mentioned, that like this was a new thing for Mad Magazine. Mad obviously did the movie and TV satires, but like telling a story like that, like sequential art, it's not really what they did. That the satires aren't a comic. They don't read like a comic. They don't taste like a comic.
They read like a mad satire. That's the best way to describe it. But me and Tony didn't do a mad satire.
No, and
go ahead.
You go ahead. I forgot.
I was going to say something more about the format like that. Oh, this is another reason why I was so attached to it and so difficult. I was literally hired as a packager when I did this strip. I told you I did the editing. A packager means like, we don't want anything to do with the lettering. We'll give you extra money and you hire somebody and you take care of that.
Okay.
We're paying you this much because you're acting on a certain level of editorial. So I was kind of packaging the whole strip, not the writing, of course. Well, part of it, so that will make you feel possessive of something when you're doing so many elements of it.
Yeah.
So I'll say that in my defense. But I just saw, if I turned it into what Sam Bibiana wanted, that I was killing the strip, and I would be disloyal to Mad itself, because the whole reason I was brought in and Tony was brought in was orders from above. I don't know if you know this, from who was the original publisher of DC Comics?
Wait,
not original. No, one in that.
Paul Levitz.
No, before him, the woman.
The
woman, isn't that horrible?
Jeanette Kahn.
Jeanette Kahn.
Yeah.
That you guys got to do something with Mad. She said, here I am being sexist again, or being sexist. A woman saying she wanted it filthy.
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah.
And I should have sent it to you. I at one point when I heard they were doing a cover, and that new Mad was Alfred Xeroxing his ass, that joke.
Yeah.
I did a painting, a tribute to Norman Mingo, but I did it basically look like he would come out of an insane asylum. I mean, he was just fucked up looking, like a street person. He looked like he'd had a lobotomy, and in every kind of intense way I could do a portrait in the kind of old tradition of Mad or Will Elder. And they just laughed and said, "Oh, that's really nice," but no.
Oh.
We're going to do this ass joke, Oh, okay.
One of the things,
and it happened with the new Mad too. I had
Yeah.
a mission for a cover and it was too raunchy for him.
No, I believe that.
Yeah.
My favorite covers were Norman Mingo covers. That's like
fantastic artist.
The high watermark. It's just, I don't the whole like just Alfred E. Neuman as somebody. That joke kind of gets a little tired, where it's like it's Spider-Man, but he has a tooth missing. It's you know, it's Bugs Bunny, but it's Alfred E. Neuman. It's like, okay, we've had that for years, guys. Let's maybe change.
But somehow Mingo, it was never boring with him. It was never repetitive as it was. It was just
no, he never did that. It was like
he was born to do that. He was born to do this fucking thing. Just like Drucker was born to do the movie parodies, you know.
Yeah. The gosh, you know, you were talking about the raunchiness. And listen, we have a couple more rounds of the game that I'm going to make you play too. Sure. But I have on this channel, like going through all these old magazines, all the old mads, I've started to notice like who draws the best babes. And so I have this sort of like contest in my mind about who draws the best babes. There's, you know, I think Bob Clark is up there with best babes. Jack Rickard, obviously, up there, draws wonderful babes. And you draw like the sexiest women I've ever seen in Mad Magazine. I don't know if this says something about me, but that's the types of women you draw. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's
I don't know how we got away with making a girl who's underage such a fucking slut, you know. Yeah. The bully's girlfriend and
the
mom
pubescent me was loving every second of that.
Well, if you remember with the mom in the first issue, she was kind of svelte, you know. She was she was real pretty, and basically my biggest influence on the strip was Hank Ketchum.
Okay. Yes.
I think once you're told that, you realize, oh yeah, sure. But I think I also put enough of my own stuff into it where it's not too obvious. But I was looking to her how Ketchum on how to draw.
That's Dennis the Menace, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the dad and the mom are kind of a send up a little bit to Hank Ketchum. Monroe, not at all. You know, Monroe is just me, I guess.
Yeah. You know what? This is a great what are those things coming out of his head?
It's just hair.
Okay.
It's like Bugs Bunny's ears. It was a thing. It was a thing to make him stand out as a character. Yeah. And if you look really close, you'll see I move them in certain ways to get expression. If he's shocked, they go up in the air. You know, if he's sad, they're down lower. Whatever. You know. I don't know how I came up with that, but I wanted something to just stand out and kind of make him a dorky loser, and it kind of does that, or did that.
Absolutely. Well, and you were talking about like having those reaction shots or those things where he's like hiding and just totally embarrassed by his mother doing something awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that. You capture that. You and Tony captured what it's like to be an adolescent in a way that nothing in Mad ever did for me. You know, at no point did I read the lighter side and think, yep, he's got it. Damn.
I like Dave Berg.
We
went to see him. Me and
you
Tony
did?
Me and Tony went to see him. We gotta go meet Dave Berg. He lives in
What was that like?
It was great. I loved him. He was funny, irreverent, told stories. You know, he talked shit. You know, he really threw Wally Wood over the butt, over the literally off the ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can go into a dramatic thing if you want me to. I have no shame.
Well, I would love to hear that because I Wally Wood I absolutely love, and I was trying to like a year or so ago try to put together like a little documentary thing about Wally Wood. He's a Minnesota boy like me, drug addict, alcoholic like me. So it's like I feel like kind of a weird.
You're on speed right now.
No.
Well, you ain't
no law. I'm sorry. You know what? Edit that out. But yeah, I would love to hear anything about Wally Wood.
Well, he was, the William M. Gaines cruises that he would take everybody on to kind of thank them for that year at Mad.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was the first one, but it was when Wood was still there, just toward the end. And, Wood would apparently taking a lot of, I don't absolutely know this, it's the rumor thing, but he did take some speed to get through his deadlines. He just worked all the fucking time.
Yeah.
All he did was work. And he also was an alcoholic. And the combination of those two things can take its toll, and it can certainly make you very aggressive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Even marijuana, if you smoke a lot of it, doesn't necessarily make you mellow. It can go exactly the other way, especially if you're a person who's like him. I'm doing a little pop psychology here, but this was a guy who was the most talented guy at what he did ever. And he could do anything in comics, but he was in comics, which is which was a shit medium in the sense that it was run by for the most part, unscrupulous publishers. Gaines, no, I think Gaines was pretty good to his people. But the regular distribution on newsstands was mafia, DC Comics was owned by Kinney parking lot people. Who owned the parking lots in New York? Come on. The rumor was Charlton was totally mafia, so, so Woody's on this cruise and he is in his cups, shall we say.
Yeah.
And he was talking to Dave, and he started to go on this "you fucking Jews" thing. I don't want to get deep into that because it's very offensive, but he destroyed himself at Mad because of that.
Oh.
And not only was Dave hurt because he's Jewish, but he was hurt because Dave says this, I don't know if it's true, he had been ghosting for Wood for quite some time on his Mad stuff, in the sense that he was doing breakdowns for him.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean by breakdowns, right?
No.
Rough,
I mean, is that like layout?
The rough sketches.
Okay.
Positioning everything, basically doing the thinking. So all Wood had to do was just draw.
Yeah.
He didn't have to break down the story or anything like that. I don't know if it's true, because Wood stuff never looked as stilted as Dave. I like Dave Berg, actually. He was the guy who was my first read magazine, a Mad, when it was a magazine as a kid. I liked the lighter side. That was my favorite part of the strip. The magazine. But you could still see that Dave was terribly hurt by that. And of course he would be,
Yeah.
But it's just like Woody had his demons. He had his demons. And I personally, even though it sounds like I just threw him under the bus, but knowing people who have been drug addicts and having a father who's an alcoholic, there's dark places they can go. Even if they don't really mean it, they'll say things to hurt people in the way that they know is going to hurt the most.
Well, and also it's like you see it a lot where people will hurt people that help them. It's like somebody helps you and then
it's called being self-destructive. Yes.
Yeah.
And I definitely have some of that myself,
Yeah. Where it's like, I resent you for being so helpful to me. It's fucked up thinking, but it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild though. I mean, but also like knowing what Wally Wood struggled with, and ultimately, I mean, he took his own life. Like, it's not exactly surprising that he would have some stories of him lashing out at people and self-sabotage.
The saddest Wood story I lived myself was I had never gone up to him when he still was doing good work and still hadn't had a stroke or anything like that yet. I didn't meet that Wally Wood. I went to a San Diego convention I'm forgetting which year is this. It's the year that Von Baudet took his life. He's another guy that could be in the top 5 if I push somebody over a little bit. Absolutely loved his work. And you know who Von Baudet is?
No, I just said yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to drag the interview, but look him up. Bode.
Right.
You won't be sorry. Amazing.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay. You continue, though.
Yeah. But I'm going to this show, right? I get he did this. He would do presentations of his comic strips where he would narrate them and act them out and do a show for the comic book fans.
Yeah.
He had died a couple weeks before the show. So I come there to meet one of my big heroes, really looking forward to the show, get the news, Von Baudet hung himself. Well, he didn't really hang himself. What happened is that he was one of these guys who was into that sadomasochistic form. I'm really going deep here. Sadomasochistic form of masturbation. The same way Chris Cornell died. You know, they put a belt around their neck and they masturbate. And
this is a family show.
Yeah, the idea that they it enhances the male organ, shall we say? Yeah. Unless you happen to slip and hang yourself, which they both did.
Yeah.
And you take it a little too far. Well, maybe I can choke a little longer. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But, you know.
That's pretty high stakes session right there.
Both were very unhappy people. Let's put it that way. So I think the flirting with death thing is, you know. And, we won't go into Chris Cornell. I'll start to cry. One of my favorite musicians. So I'm in this mood, right? This show. What else can go wrong at this show? And actually, do you know who Jim Steranko is? Yeah.
Marvel guy.
He
had the beautiful silver hair.
Yeah, which was a wig later, but anyway, we used to do jokes about that. But he was super kind to me when I was young. I sent him my work and he critiqued it, and he would actually call me once in a while. Didn't do that many times, but we were friendly. Huge fan of his work. He's worth looking up. But he sees me walking in the show and he goes, "Jim, Bill, come here." I'm like, "You ever met Wally Wood?" And he's standing right there. And I'm like, "No, Wally. Oh, nice to meet you." And Wally's like,
yeah.
Like, okay. In other words, he's at this point struggles to speak. He can speak, but it's kind of muffled, and you know, a lot of times that'll happen with not Alzheimer's, but you know, if you've had a stroke or whatever. But so Steranko did the pass off to me, which was like, he loved Wally Wood. He was completely influenced by him. He owed him a lot, but he didn't want to shepherd Wally Wood around the show. Wally was looking for a shepherd, you know, because he was kind of lost, and at this point in his life, and so he clings on to me, and I'm like, thinking this is cool for about 5 minutes, and then it's just like it's starting to get kind of sad. But I stuck with him, and we went to a professionals party afterwards. But he could, his speech was so low. It was still coherent, but a little bit hard to follow. And it was so loud at the party, he would lean into my ear and he would whisper. I did not understand a word this man said to me all night.
Yeah.
Occasional word here and there. And I had showed him my work a little bit, and he liked it. And I felt like I was seeing the wheels turn in his head about, you know, maybe you can come out and do some assisting for me.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but I was so distraught by his condition that I didn't call him. You know, I didn't want to spend any more time with the guy, just like the way Steranko kind of passed him off. like
Yeah.
it's so hard to be a caretaker, so to speak, to someone you admire so much, especially a young man like me who was looking for a father figure with every professional cartoonist he met, because my dad was so shitty, And I
Yeah.
was always hoping that one of these guys would take me under their wing, And so I didn't need to be having Wood under my wing. That made no sense to me,
Yeah.
so to speak. And then,
Who?
about 2 months later, he shot himself. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
happy story.
The who
I got lots of
like
stories.
as far as like mentorship or anything like you just talked about, like was there anybody that stands out as like being like filling that position for like a mentor for you?
I certainly looked for it. When I was a real young kid, I went to see Alex Toth. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Yeah. And the first time I visited him, I did it with this genius young friend of mine, fellow comic book collector, who was like, I think I was 16 and he was 13. He actually went to Harvard after that while he was still a teenager. He was a brilliant kid.
Wow.
He introduced me to like why certain artists at EC Comics were better than others, like Bernie Krigstein. I don't know if you know his work.
Yeah.
Who ended up becoming a favorite of mine. But at first, I thought Wally Wood was the only good artist. I mean, not only one, but it was the best one.
Yeah.
But we had a wonderful day with Alex Toth. And I didn't know he was bipolar. Because I came to see him on my own after my friend was going to school a year or two later. And we were getting along, we were talking, and he's just like, so what are you up to? What are you up to, Bill? And I said, one of the reasons I came to see you, because I was so excited. This was one of my first professional jobs in the business. I'm going to work for Russ Manning. Russ Manning was the artist on the Daily and Sunday comic book strip at the time.
Yeah.
Daily and Sunday Tarzan comic book strip. And comic books, he did the comic books first, then he got the strip. Arguably the best Tarzan artist. Well, we'll see. I don't know, but maybe. But me and Rick Hoberg were working for him for doing these comic strips in Europe in his style. But this was like the routine, like one of those classic comedy routines. When I said to him the word Russ, the name Russ Manning, slowly I turn, step by step, inch by inch, because it was just whole persona just changed. Like he was suddenly the Wolf Man.
Yeah.
And he goes, fuck Russ Manning. And I'm like, what? And he goes, that fucking dick. What did you bring him up to me for? And then he went on for 45 minutes on this diatribe about how fucked comics was and how fucked everybody in it was and his miserable fucking time in it. And I'm 15 years old or 16, whatever it was. All I want to do is get into this business. All I'm excited is to tell somebody I admire that I got a job in it. And he's not really berating me, but he's not realizing how he's berating so hard at me that I feel like he's berating me.
Yeah.
So it was like, after about an hour, I think, oh, let's have some hamburger. All of a sudden his wife made us some food and it was fine. But I was like, oh my God. I was so beaten down by it all that I really didn't want to visit him again. And then I was working at Hanna-Barbera for a little while, and he was there doing character designs. He was famous for doing that for Hanna-Barbera for years, of all their the Mighty Mightor and all that shit. And hey, Alex, how you doing? Hey, Bill, what's going on? Remembered who I was? I was shocked.
Yeah.
And I was making money, and he had done a story called White Devil, Yellow Devil, which was, I thought, his best story he'd ever drawn. And I told him that, and he was flattered. And I said, would you be willing to sell it, the original art? Because I was an art collector. And he said, yeah, but it would be $200 a page. Back then, the top artists you would get for $20. $15, $10, $200 a page. And I said, okay. And he was like shocked. And I gave him $200. And then I got fired, which is another whole story, which I won't go into unless you want to. And I was behind on paying him. I told him I'd pay him $200 a month. And I'd let it go for a couple months because I wasn't making any money. I thought, well, when I get another job, then I'll pay. I was too embarrassed to tell him. I should have. I really should have. I ran into him at an art store. And he totally shined me on, was really mean to me, and pretended like I'd never given him $200. Kept the money. I never got the art. So,
you bastard.
But everybody's got an Alex Toth story about what a dick. And at the end of his life, he was diagnosed with being bipolar, and I can tell you, he certainly was.
Yeah.
Let's try to think of somebody positive. Williamson was. He was great. Yeah, he was great. Guys like my contemporaries, more like, were generally pretty nice. Most of my editors I ever had at DC Comics were great.
Yeah.
So, I've told you the highlights of things going wrong, but plenty of things went right, that I'm grateful for, I don't know if you want another question about Matt or something.
Yeah. Well, here, real quick, this is why we can't bring up autoerotic asphyxiation, because then the chat does stuff like this. David Carradine went that way too.
Yeah.
And the lead singer of INXS, look at, they're like the Wikipedia for people who died masturbating. It's great.
Well, religious people would say, well, we warned you.
All right. Well, let's hop into the next round. We have 2 more rounds of this game. The next one is artists. I picked these 3 artists, not randomly. I'm glad I picked these ones, though. I think it'll be very interesting. Jack Davis, Wally Wood, or John Severin. Schmuck, marry, kill.
Oh man, I like them all equally.
I know, that's the terrible thing about this game.
Well, I'm gonna marry Jack Davis,
the sweetheart of the South.
Yeah, because he is such a sweetheart. I didn't know him. I met him briefly, and he was so warm and kind. I'm going with that.
All right.
And God damn. All right, I'm just going to be flippant. I'll kill Wally Wood to put him out of his misery. and what did the S stand for?
Schmuck.
And I'm going to schmuck John Severin for his extreme conservative views.
Oh, all right. Perfect. And now the final round. This is writers. We've selected Dick DiBartolo, Anthony Barbieri, and Desmond Devlin. All 3 of whom you've worked with.
Yeah, well, I've married Tony.
All right.
And the other 2 guys I really haven't worked with. So I'll randomly say, I'm sorry, it was Dick DiBartolo and who else?
Desmond Devlin.
I'm going to kill Desmond Devlin because I don't really remember his work that clearly at Mad.
All right.
And schmuck DiBartolo.
All right. Excellent. This has been Schmuck, Marry, Kill. You're the very first contestant on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm so proud to be number 1.
Yeah. So I have a few. We have some questions that have been popping up in the chat.
Okay.
And so I'm going to highlight some of these. Actually, before I do that, I'll give people a chance to drop in new questions. Actually, with not like I didn't know that you had so much control over the Monroe strip. And one of the things that is really apparent when you look at it from beginning to end is how the layouts worked. So you would have panels, and on the first handful of strips, I think you would have like the little dotted arrows kind of leading the reader along from panel to panel.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you eventually moved away into like the more traditional comic layout. What could you just tell me about that? Like that, some of those choices you made for layout?
I cannot remember. I hate to give you one of those. My sense is that maybe they were worried that the reader wouldn't follow it, so they put them in the arrows, and then they relaxed about it after a while. But it may have been me when I first saw that, thinking, "Are the readers going to follow this?" I'm going to give you an old man answer. I don't remember.
All right. And then the other thing we were talking, my friend Kyle Bridget, he has a YouTube channel. He was a mad contributor late, like in the, I forget when. But anyway, we have a podcast, and we have been going through and examining Monroe as part of that. And one of the things that came up was some of the way you draw women. Now, this is complimentary, right? We're curious, is there, when you draw some of these women, do you have people in mind? You know, like, are you inspired by childhood memories of the buxom women or disgusting women? Like, I guess I'm just thinking about the character design, mostly on the women. I don't know.
Well, I do like a curvy woman, no doubt about it. And so, but I like a curvy ass too. Most of my girlfriends have always qualified for that fetish.
Yeah.
I can't even explain why the large breast thing. Maybe it's so psychological. Like, I had a kind of distant mom, so maybe I wanted mommy back, that I never had,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into it too much, but I had a pretty difficult childhood. So, I think I think if I couldn't draw, I would have gotten into comedy in some way. And you probably are well aware that a lot of comedians are fucked up, and that's why they become that. It's like the stage becomes their place where their therapy. They're letting it all out. They're hating in a way too, particularly somebody like Sam Kinison or, whoever,
Yeah.
So I have a certain amount of that in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Did I answer the question? Yeah. It's just like, if I'm going to draw a girl, and most artists are this way in comics, they're going to want to fuck them. I mean, I want to draw something that's what I.
Yeah.
And what comes off of that is that the drawings are kind of erotic. They've got there's passion there.
Yes.
And that's what an artist should do. Please put his passion down on paper.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that feels
Dave Berg wasn't passionate.
No.
on paper. But I think that's what was the strength of the strip, was its kind of banality.
Yeah.
The Mad Guys called it the kid's entrance strip. I don't know if you ever heard that phrase.
No.
But that's what editors would say. Because most kids liked that strip the best because it was the quickest and easiest to read, and it was the most relatable to simple household situations that they dealt with all the time.
Yeah, I just don't understand that.
I didn't read the movie parodies till at first. I would read Dave Berg, and then I would read Don Martin. And the last thing I would read would be the movie parody.
Yeah.
It took some effort,
Yes, I'm with you on that. I mean, I still don't read the movie parodies. But
I love answer.
Yeah, I love Dave Berg, but I sort of, I don't like the lighter side of. And there's this time in like the 60s where before he fell into the lighter side of, and he would do all of this like crazy stuff, these like really neat drawings that would like almost like sometimes they were like drawings of inventions or of cars that would, I think, in some ways rival Jaffee's drawings as far as like the little fine details and like the little silly things that he would include in them.
I agree.
And it just feels like a bummer that it's like, well, that's what you're known for, is the lighter side of.
Well, I don't know if you've ever thought of it this way, but he's literally doing that title, lighter, as in almost vapid.
Yeah.
You know, this is not biting satire as much as it's sort of funny blandness, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked his early work at Mad. Looks like a completely different cartoonist.
Yes.
But I would say that he was thinking, and we didn't have this discussion, this is just my opinion, I think he thought his later style was sophisticated, if that makes any sort of sense. But sophisticated doesn't mean passionately funny.
Yeah.
They're two different things. So
yeah, maybe the problem is I go into it with an incorrect expectation.
Maybe.
And I just need to look at it as the lighter side.
And let's face it, like a lot of strips, it just ran too long. It was, you know, it shouldn't have run for 30 years or whatever it was. You know, the first 10 years of that strip were pretty funny. And the style was still a little bit like the old style until it got so formula. And I think his first few paperbacks were really pretty funny. But you can only kind of do the same kind of thing, which he did, repeat it so many times and not have it just get played out. And it did.
Yeah. I do want to get now to some questions from the viewers. This is from Cam Hayden. Cam Hayden's an awesome artist. He's shit, where is it? He's in this. Have you heard of Freaky Magazine?
I haven't, but I can certainly see his influences.
Yeah, it's this is what's his name? I forget his name. Andrew Goldfarb. He puts this together. But here's some I think that's some of Cam Hayden's stuff. Anyway, Cam Hayden says, "Are you still reading any comics?"
Not really, because there's no humor comics that you find in the store. I suppose if I was dedicated to looking around at fandom, small publishers or self-publishing, I might be able to find some stuff. But because it's always out there, you know.
Yeah.
But when I used to go into comic book shops regularly until about 10 years ago. It sort of tapered off for me. And I had a tendency to mostly buy old stuff, you know, not a whole lot new.
Yeah.
And the last humor comic stuff that I really got into was Peter Bagg and Dan Klaus. You know, and that's already forever ago, you know. Well, not really. Dan's still doing stuff. And I was actually lucky enough to get to ink Peter Bagg at one point. But who's you know, it's like there's so many good artists at Marvel and DC now, but everything is so overwrought, you know, so meticulously rendered with enough body hair for 10 people, you know, enough muscles for 10 people as well. And I don't know, you probably never saw it, but I did this little comic strip for Dark Horse.
Oh, Big Blown Baby.
Yeah.
Where I don't have all of them. I've been like picking them up.
There's only 4.
Yeah. I think I have like issues 2 and 3 in my collection.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was drawing big blown figures, you know, but what's turned into, I look at everything now and I see it as a parody of what Marvel does, not actually what Marvel does, but that's what they do now.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, how much thicker is Batman going to get? You know, it's when is he's become the Hulk now.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, to answer his questions, I don't really. Maybe I should, but I'm also not a nice guy when it comes to things like if the artwork isn't on a level of a Jack Davis or a Mort Drucker, chances are I'm not going to look at it. You
Yeah.
know, even if there's some really good writing going on there, and maybe I should be more open to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard though when comics is a visual medium, so it's if the art isn't engaging, it is hard to get over that sometimes.
Well, I think I just have kind of grown. It's I'm just old, you know. I kind of grew tired of a lot of that stuff, and you know, I used to love the Hernandez brothers, and I wouldn't pick their work up now. I'm sure it's still good. You know, just get so much of it, you don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if another Bill Watterson came along, I think I'd be pretty excited.
Yeah.
You know?
Here's a question. I know you get this a lot. Are the Monroes ever going to be compiled into a book of any kind?
Well, you have to ask the people at Mad, because I have no say over that. You reminded me of a conversation I had with Nick, his goodbye conversation to me, when he said he didn't expect Mad to last much longer. And that to keep a hold of my Mad original art, because you never know what might happen, where I could reprint it myself or something like that. And I don't know what he was talking about there, because Mad owns it, you know.
Yeah.
And the reason we didn't get hired back was my fault. Under Morrison's brief tenure, was that they were hiring writers from television. That was their big deal, that if we get writers from television, we're gonna, you know, the executives like the sound of that, right?
Yeah.
To the point where they were giving him profit participation, which they'd never done before.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Tony's a writer from Hollywood, and Jimmy Kimmel, and we know that you own Monroe, and that deal's already been cut. But if you want us to do it over again, and I talked to Tony about this, I think we should have, and you deserve the same deal that these new writers are going to get. Just because they own it, they can make that choice. They're not going to want to, but they can make that choice to let us participate, because we wanted to be involved if there was ever an animated version of it. Because Tony was convinced that Diary of a Wimpy Kid was a ripoff of Monroe. I've never seen the thing, but
yeah,
if he says that, there must be some parallels, because he's, you know, he wouldn't say that if he didn't really feel strongly.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That why didn't Warner Brothers come to us and say, help us develop this as a cartoon? Let's see let's do some presentations of the animated version. I mean, I'm from animation. It just absolutely makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, nobody ever does anything that makes sense, you know, it seems like. But, you know, I laid that on the table as part of a positive thing, and I don't think he couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, he was already out of there. They only gave him about a year, which is no, that's not enough time to pull up a product that nothing is selling anymore on the magazine stand. Nothing, you know.
Yeah. I mean, they're still printing Mad. It's just all reprints, or like mostly reprints.
Well, they're also reprinting the reprints. The last this big book that was on the stand it said John Ficarra on it. I'm like, what? And I realized it was a reprint of an older reprint.
Yeah.
But I also think that there was an element of bitterness, and this is my fault completely, from Ficarra, probably. Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't give a fuck about it, or generally about the story of me doing this stuff behind the scenes. Maybe nobody gives a fuck. Maybe it's just like, that's probably what it is. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
But I sensed that maybe, and I'm being kind of paranoid, me leaving on a bad note wasn't the best thing for encouraging a reprint of all the material into one book, because that's going to place a positivity back on myself and Tony that I don't think John wanted to give, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
They just I don't know. I don't. Here's the thing about Monroe. When Monroe came out, it was most popular. They told me it was the most popular thing. I got Drucker's rate for doing that strip.
Whoa.
They told me I was getting paid the top rate.
Yeah.
And I got regular raises till I got there, and they said that's it. We don't pay any more than that now. But I don't think that they respect the time frame the strip was done, because even though it's the most popular strip in those days when you were a kid, the sales were way down. So it's not something that's a phenomena like a collection of Batman stories that they parodied, or whatever other theme they might want to try to put together for mad reprints, horror or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And they tried to keep the strip going for a little while. I never looked at it again. I was bitter about it. So I don't know how long that lasted, but I don't think it lasted very long. And so I managed to make it a bitter pill for them. I'm sorry about that now, because it was self-destructive in certain ways, but I think just my attitude and how we parted in such a bad way is why they've never done it since. But it doesn't make any sense now, because there's nobody at editorial that I ever worked with there now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, at this point, it seems like it would be well worth the effort of compiling that and printing that.
You would think. I don't know. I wonder if the look of the strip would be a little dated now.
I mean, I think you're going to get people buying it for nostalgia anyway. So, and I mean, okay, well, I was curious about this with your style. I know it's like you have many different styles, right? Like you're an incredible artist, but like there's some similarities between your style in Monroe and Harvey Kurtzman. Is that intentional?
Oh, absolutely. It's my hero.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's
and I think as I got looser on the strip, it got more Kurtzman-like, actually. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's like, and so if you're talking about reprinting it, it's like, Kurtzman's, it didn't look dated then, right? When you were like drawing it in the first place, and it was like reminiscent of Kurtzman stuff. I think it ages incredibly well. I think the humor does too. It's so well written.
Yeah, Tony's a great writer.
Yeah. Here's from Cam Hayden. Did you meet Don Martin?
Not Don. Don was living in Florida, and he had a shield of his wife being the type of woman who always answered the phone and filtered everybody out. And when I heard that, I said, I'm not going to even try to call him. Sorry, I don't have any more to tell you about Don. But I was always a big fan. Captain Klutz killed me as a kid.
Yeah. This is from Kaya's Comics. Loved your work on Batman the Cult with Bernie Wrightson.
Well, that's nice. Should I tell a cult story?
Yeah, I didn't realize you worked on that.
Yeah. How that worked was I was inking at DC, but also coloring for them. And I was doing this full processed color. That was the first time they decided to do it, which is like the European hardcover books were doing that. So you could do the color hand painted, and the drawing would be on an overlay, the black line. So it could be way more rendered than traditional flat comic book color. Because this is the like in between period of like doing it with the old separations, this period, and then digital came after that. And since I could paint, and most of the colorists there could not, it made sense to put me on these graphic novels. And I did one called The Earth Stealers over Jerry Ordway and Kurt Swan, and a couple other things. And one day they call me, my art director, Richard Burning, calls me into his office and says, I got a pretty amazing project for you. And I'm like, and he goes, how'd you like to color Bernie Wrightson? And I'm just like, drool, huh? I've been telling you a lot of negative stories, but this is, oh my God. And I said, well, does he know my work or anything? He goes, we don't need to talk about that. He's was going to paint it himself, but he's late, and we're going to miss all our shipping dates unless he just concentrates on finishing the inking. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And I mean, I had a slight trepidation about that, you know. I had actually met Bernie years ago when they had this place called the Studio, where all these different great artists shared a studio space. Jeff Jones, Mike Kaluta, and Barry Windsor Smith, and him. But he didn't remember me, but I'll tell you why in a minute. A week or two in of working on it, I'm working on it, and I'm like, The Cult. Did you read The Cult?
No, I don't think I.
Basically,
I'm like a Batman fan. I should have.
Basically, give me your address and I'll send you one. Basically, it's Batman on acid with a preacher, evil preacher who thinks he's Jesus Christ reborn as his villain. Yeah. Jim Starlin's story is a great story. So I had taken LSD and I just said, well, I'm going to make these panels where he's drugged and hypnotized or whatever. I can't remember exact how they controlled him, but I'm going to make those parts like an acid trip, truly like how it looks, and contrast it with the regular stuff, which was a little more muted. So most people liked it, but there's some people who hate it. But I'm in my studio, and I was really blessed. I had a studio space in Soho and part of a loft. I was able to get that space, rent that space from somebody who was sympathetic to artists going to school, and that's why I was in New York. I did comics to pay for my education. And I get a call. Bill Wray? Yeah. Bernie Wrightson. Hi, Bernie. Yeah, I know what you're doing. I talked to him before. He's a super nice guy. Couldn't meet a nicer guy. He's pissed off. He's like, where are you? Well, I'm in Soho. What's your address? 465 West Broadway. I'm coming over. I'm like, well, okay. You're certainly clicked. 10, 15 minutes later, he just jumped in a cab from DC, I guess. And he comes up. Let me see the art. And he's pacing the room. He is angry. And it's like, okay. I'd done about 10 pages or so. And I show them to him. Let's see if I can. It's getting dark in this room. I'm sorry. You're not going to see me very well. But he's got the art in front of him, and he's like, he's concentrating. I mean, he's really looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
Each page almost like a full minute. That's a long time when someone's standing there.
Oh, yeah.
And then turn it, and then looking. And he's not displaying any emotion, but he's intently looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm editorializing here. He's trying to find how fucked this is because he's fully prepared to be fucked. You know?
Yeah.
That's why he's so mad. And he finally goes, after he's looking through all the pages, he goes, this is not exactly how I would do it, but I can see what you've done. All right. Bye-bye. Leaves. So he approved, and he got it. He got the whole acid thing and all that, because if you know his work really well, he's done a few paintings where it's like that intensely colored, like I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So he likes, sometimes you push it that far, even though he's mostly a very moody artist. But we became friends after that. I was invited out to parties at his place. He had me do a Punisher. It was his choice. He picked me for a Punisher graphic novel.
Cool.
But in my life, there's always a little something that doesn't quite go right. I'm up at DC one day, and I had negotiated a good deal. Colorists never got royalties. I got a bonus. They wouldn't give me a royalty, but they give me a bonus. I said, give me a bonus if it sells really well. And so I got a bonus.
Yeah.
At comic conventions, artwork was popular, and I was able to sell a lot of it at a good price. And although I'd rather have it back now, but Jim Starlin's in the office, the writer. And trust me, he's a very big time fan favorite artist, important cartoonist from the 80s, right? And, oh, Bill. And he's like, I want to talk to you. He's not friendly. We go into, find an empty office, and he just says, I have to tell you this. The coloring on the cult, it's shit. And I'm like, okay. And I've made allusions to my childhood, and alcoholic father in 3 wars, short-tempered man, not a kind man. Mm-hmm. I immediately felt myself becoming my dad, who solved situations like this quite brutally.
Yeah.
And I was a bodybuilder then. I knew how to box. It was just like, I just immediately went, I'll talk to you later, Jim. And pulled a Steve Ditko and just pulled out of the office, closed the door. Because there's a famous story about Alex Toth hanging an editor out the window at DC. It was it's supposed to be Julie Schwartz. And Julie, I asked him about it, and Julie said, that never happened. That's just a rumor, But knowing Alex, I was like, probably came pretty close to that. So anyway, I never talked to Jim after that. I never hurt him.
Yeah.
But I knew
that's very good.
if I let it get into an argument at the minimum, let alone something physical, I'd be finished at DC forever. So I just left. Just left.
All right. So 2 things. Well, 3 things really. First, it's kind of funny, like have the bookends of the 2 stories you told. One at Space Jam with the director looking at the Mobius work and it's like flipping, being like, no, you don't get it. And then Bernie Wrightson taking that time and like staring for minutes on end at each page.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun comparison. We've almost talked for 2 hours now. The time has just flown by. I do want to say, I'm going to give you, what's that?
You can see it's dark here.
Yeah. You talked about a few times, you're like, I keep telling these like negative stories or like bad stories. Before we go, what is your favorite memory of working at Mad Magazine?
Nick's friendship, I would say. The stuff where, me and him would just be regular guys when we would talk. Him doing things like introducing me to Drucker, that was really good times. And not that there was that many of them, but there was unfortunately, I wasn't living in New York that whole time, or I would have been down at the offices and I would have stories to tell you. But it was all freelance, and I'm back in California. Okay. But the whole strip, I mean, besides the down stories are more fun to tell because they're sort of cathartic and they're kind of entertaining in their shipwreckness. But I'd have been happy to do that strip for 20 years. I did it for about 8 or 10, something like that. And I was happy as a clam doing that thing. Other than, there'd be once in a while, a little slight flare up in the editorial meetings, but It was nothing I wasn't used to. I don't think they were, particularly for Carl wasn't. Because if you know him, if you've been to I have been to a mad party before, or when you see him, he's the kind of person that immediately puts you down. He does one of those kind of acerbic comments that's at your expense.
Mm.
And because of who he is, you're so taken aback by it that you don't have the snappy comeback.
Yeah.
I wasn't Al Jaffee. And the am I gonna, like I say, it was Nick and my friendship with him. And what was nice is that when he passed, his daughter called me and said that she was quite aware that Nick liked me and that she was selling his collection, so she thought she'd give me first shot at it. Somehow she knew that I collected art, so Nick must have told her that or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really, really nice.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
Boy, they say never meet your heroes, Bill, but this has been an absolute pleasure. I can't tell you just how pleased I am with this whole conversation. And
I have no filters, which is great for your viewers.
Well, it's great when I throw a game like Schmuck, Marry, Kill at somebody unexpectedly. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I really just appreciate it. And this is a hell of a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And all of you who have been watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment down below. It really helps the channel. And thanks for watching. Toodaloo.